Welcome back to Media7. It isn't a long book, but it has a thrilling plot. It's Crisis, one central bank governor and the global financial collapse. And it's a true story by Reserve Bank Governor Alan Bollard. Jose Barbosa explains what the governor does.
To my mind, the best illustration of the volatility of the market can be found in Mary Poppins.
So, you have tuppence?
In this scene, young Michael Banks is urged to invest tuppence at his father's bank. Watch what happens when his latent socialism is activated.
Give it back! Give me back the money! Give me back my money!
There's something wrong. The bank won't give someone their money.
Well, I'm going to get mine.
Stop all payments! Stop all payments!
When a new governor of the Reserve Bank is appointed, this scene is played for them in a darkened room. A reminder that each word uttered is scrutinised and measured by the whole country. Therefore, Alan Bollard's words have to be chosen carefully, so he doesn't frighten the horses. The only way to do this is to make sure no one knows what you're talking about.
We have brought in phase one of a prudential liquidity scheme, which has got a core funding ratio requirement.
Bollard and the team have to keep a balance between inflation and deflation. With inflation, prices rise, meaning money is starting to lose its value. This is bad because it decreases the value of people's savings. Deflation, although it's rare, is when the value of money increases. This is bad because people keep their money in banks rather than investing it. In other words, Bollard keeps the water pump in the financial aquarium chugging away so we can all go about our business. By necessity, Bollard's role is outside government influence. It means he can basically write off John Key's Job Summit and get away with it.
I wasn't impressed by some of the business leaders' views of how to do policy. They were quite naive about that.
So Bollard's a bit like a fiscal groundhog whose statements indicate the immediate economic climate. Or perhaps he's more like the Phantom, keeping watch in Skull Cave, called into action whenever price stability and the Crown settlement account are threatened.
I met Alan Bollard earlier in the day and asked him how discreet he had to be in telling his story.
There are some things that I haven't said. I was party to a number of confidences that I didn't feel it was right to pass on. I was in meetings internationally with other central bankers where the custom, the tradition, the culture is totally, you don't talk about it. So I've been very careful what I've said, but I think, I hope there's enough in there that people can get the real feel for things.
I get the impression from the book that you don't particularly highly rate the quality of commentary and reporting from New Zealand financial journalists. Would that be fair?
Not entirely, no. I mean, to me, New Zealand financial journalists represent a huge cross-section from the very unskilled to the very skilled. And so there's some who, have got to be up there top in the world, and there's others who aren't. And then, in addition, somebody in my position never knows how much we can trust the media. And consequently, we won't talk on background. And what happened in this crisis was there were a number of times when we had to rely on media judgment because speculative articles about risks of things that could happen in financial institutions could have had very nasty results if they'd just been put up as a quite accurate but speculative headline in the media. And that's what worried me. So I didn't know how much we could really rely on that sort of judgment. That was a fear. Now, as it happened, we didn't have anything that really caused us worry. I felt that the journalists who attend our press conferences and are regulars in our area do have the experience to understand that. But, they must have been under a bit of pressure from their editors to say, come on, I want a headline tomorrow, which would actually have been damaging for New Zealand.
There are multiple points in the book where you appear to feel that you've dodged a bullet. Between the lines, you're saying, phew, the journalists at the press conference didn't ask me the hard question.
Well, the hard question of those press conferences was, can you guarantee that there are no problems around the financial system? And I could never have said yes to that. And I didn't want to have to say no to it because that itself could have been damaging. So that was the issue in all of this. And yeah, there were times when I thought I would be asked that question and I wasn't.
So in that sense, did it help you do your job that some of those journalists didn't do their job to the extent they might have?
We always sort of argue with journalists about what's their job. Journalists are out there fearlessly in search of the truth, sometimes, in my view, have had an overdose of Woodward and Bernstein and Watergate and all that sort of stuff, which was a completely different sort of issue. Just chasing rumours around the financial markets can be a very dangerous thing and pretty damaging for the country.
On the other hand, I've talked to a couple of financial journalists who said during that time, the late 2008, they were fielding rumours of runs on banks, really quite alarming stuff, and they chose not to go with those. So clearly there was a degree of responsibility at play.
I agree there was, but that's from the mainline and main wire agencies. Couldn't have guaranteed that with a cub reporter around some minor publication who thought they could make their first headline and their reputation.
I'm interested that you say that there was never any background briefing. I've spoken to one financial journalist who said he had multiple off-the-record conversations with Mike Hanna, your press secretary.
Well, I mean, Mike Hanna is our senior press and communications person. He knows how to do that. He knows, yes, there's a lot of information being given, but often actually it's telling people about things that are potentially in the public arena, but they don't necessarily know how to access that information.
Were journalists also a useful source of intelligence for you?
No, I wouldn't say journalists were. The financial markets were, absolutely. But the thing about the financial markets is there's everything in there, from intelligence to non-intelligence, and you've got to be sifting and analysing it all. And with the growth of the wire agencies, the Bloombergs, the Reuters, all that material coming down, there's a huge amount of data and a huge amount of opinion, much more than we've ever had in any crisis before.
I was intrigued that you wrote that you found various expert blogs handy in understanding what was going on.
The blogs are a way that you're getting very informed and very clever people around the world's markets able to give their own opinions very, very quickly, irrespective of the institutions that they may or may not be associated with. And yeah, we got a lot of stuff. Now, I mean, of course, we got what we'd call type 1, type 2 errors. There's a lot of stuff arguing that there were risks that weren't risks, and there was failure to identify risks that were risks. So it can lead you off in the wrong directions as well. But a heap more information than we ever would have had in previous crises. But most of it's international stuff we were talking about.
What's the key thing that you would hope people come away from reading the book with?
Well, actually, I hope it's the sort of sharing the experience. It was an incredible experience. I mean, we don't know that it's completely over yet, but it didn't happen as we thought. I've got on my shelf a big, thick book called Resolving Bank Crises. I didn't open it during this thing because it just happened differently from all of that. So it is an unusual experience, and it does take over your life. And that's why I've dropped a bit of sort of personal stuff in there as well, to just show how it affects you and how you've got to react to that. I hope people who are interested in the media and people who are interested in government policy will get a feel for some of the stuff is a bit complicated. It's not clear. It's not all linear. You don't sort of sit there at the beginning and say, right, this is a crisis, we'll do the following things and then it'll be over. It's not like that at all. You don't know what's happening tomorrow. Just sort of sharing the depth of that sort of experience. And it's what I really like is when someone says, gee, that was an interesting book, I didn't think I'd enjoy economics.
Alan Bollard, or Al Boll as the kids call him. An unedited version of that interview is on the Media7 website, and the book is Crisis, One Central Bank Governor and the Global Financial Collapse. Before we go, let's have a little look at a papal visit that, in the media, was not all about the love. So as Pope Benedict prepared to embark on the first ever state visit by a pope to Britain last week, he was warmly welcomed in the media.
Pope Benedict will arrive in the middle of one of the biggest crises the Catholic Church has ever faced, the sexual abuse of children by paedophile priests.
This should be a private visit, and it should be funded by the people who want the Pope here. I don't want the Pope here, and I don't want to pay for him.
But to be fair, the firefight was waged in both directions.
One of Pope Benedict's advisors, Cardinal Casper, has said Britain was aggressively atheistic and compared arriving at Heathrow Airport to arriving in a third world country.
That earned this response from the Pope of people who don't believe in that sort of nonsense, Richard Dawkins.
I can just imagine the discussions in the corridors of Vatican power. How are we going to distract them from buggering boys?
It It seemed from the coverage that if Britons weren't receiving Mass in the company of thousands of others, they were marching in the streets again it.
Gay rights are human rights.
The roadshow moved on to London in the relative normality of a terrorist threat, which all turned out to be a terrible misunderstanding. And after a week of raging arguments in the press, it was somehow touching that a few people just wanted to see someone famous.
I was really excited. I went to the Lady Gaga concert a few weeks ago. There's so much more excitement than that, like right now.
Well, I hope we were nearly as exciting as Lady Gaga. That is our show. Thanks to Inspector John Spence, Richard Langston, Alan Bollard and those people who helped us out with reports from Pororoa. And of course, thanks to you for watching. We'll be back with Media 7 at the same time next week. Until then, goodbye.